everybody. Welcome back to our third and final installment of our Scapes lesson. On the first week, we made a cityscape. Week 2, we made a landscape in crayon. And then week 3 is going to be a watercolor painting of a seascape or a waterscape. I've included a slideshow of some wonderful seascapes from art history and contemporary art. And you should look at those before you make your artwork and decide which direction that you would like to go. I was really inspired by the Edward Hopper painting, and so I borrowed some of his ideas in my version. But before you start, I wanted to talk to you about painting water. When you paint water, even if it's a pretty rough sea, in the background, the horizon is going to be flat. So if you're going to paint water, make sure that if you're showing it in the distance up against the sky, then you draw a flat line there. Unless you're doing something really close up, like the tidal wave by Hokusai. That's what it's going to look like. You can have land in the foreground if you like, or your picture can be taken from the water, so the water would be down in the foreground instead. And then, if you like, you can also include some of the land off in the distance, a peninsula, or maybe even a little desert island way off in the distance. And to differentiate between the sky and the land, you can use different forms of color. If you have a lot of colors available to you, you can use your turquoises and your blues. When we do, this is from the Great Lakes watercolor landscape. I've taught in the past, and this is blue, and this is more of the turquoise or blue-green. Or you can try mixing some blue and green together in your watercolor set in one of the little wells up here, and making a new color to work with. And then I've included a couple simple drawings of things you might find on the water, a little sailboat, a little lighthouse. And of course, you can always look up how to draw tutorials online if you want to draw something as specific as an iron ore ship. I bet you could find something like that. When you're doing watercolor, you have to use permanent marker to outline. You can't use the flare pen like we did for the cityscape. I have, if you have one of these little fine point guys, you could use that, which is what I used here. And if you don't have that, just use the Sharpie from your art kit, and that should work fine. These will not bleed when you paint over them, but a flare pen will. It's not waterproof. Okay, so you need some water, a nice fluffy brush, and then let's begin to paint. All right, I'm gonna start by painting the water. And to do that, I'm gonna go and start to wet down the paper a little bit where I want the paint to go. If I don't want the paint to go there, I'm gonna leave it dry. That little bit of dry paper is going to act as a barrier to keep the water from going where I don't want it to go. But if you get the whole paper wet, then the watercolor is just going to spread around like crazy. If you want to use this technique, make sure that you give a little bit of dry time in between each section of your painting. So if you're gonna, don't paint wet right next to wet, but let the paint dry for a little bit and then try going in with your other color. I'm going to go ahead and I think I'll paint this with this kind of blue-green color here. I could use the blue that's here too, and then I'm just going to put it into the wet paper and spread it around. Notice that, especially when we're working small like this, a little bit goes a really long way. And I'm not smashing the paintbrush down into the paper. I'm just using the tip, and you're just kind of nudging the paint where you want it to go. So come on, go over here, go over here. And then I'll add a little bit of another color there to mix like this. You got some beautiful blue water. When you're painting with watercolor, don't work the paint into the paper. What you want to do is to touch the paint as little as possible and just let it rest and let it soak in. Especially since we're using the drawing paper too, we don't want to overwork it. in this section of my paper. I don't mind if this mixes a little bit. I'm letting the color kind of bleed in here. And then I'm going to take a little bit of this color here and add it in. Or I could do a little purple if I wanted to, but I'm just going to do a little bit of this turquoise. Okay. All right. Now, while this is soaking up paint, I'm going to let it rest, and I am going to paint something else. So I'm going to I want my lighthouse to have a little red hat. So I'm gonna paint the little tip of the lighthouse. And in watercolor, if you want to leave anything white, you don't actually have to paint it white. You just leave it the color of the paper. And then to make this feel kind of like a sandy beach, I could add a bit of yellow and then add brown to it. That creates this color here. If you wanted more of a bright green, you could add yellow and green together and mix them together on the land right here. All right, I'm gonna let this, while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm gonna go ahead and do this part of the sky here the same way. So just go ahead and, this is called wet on wet. It's one of my favorite watercolor techniques. You just get the paper wet first and then add the color. If you haven't used your color yet in your paint set, you should wake it up a little bit by stirring a little bit of water into it, giving it a little mix. Oh, see, my little red lighthouse is starting to bleed. But I can just keep painting the sky. I'd like a little more paint than that though. So keep going, keep painting. Have a wonderful time. Take your time. Be careful when you get to the edge. Don't let it turn into a big gooey mess. But if it does, you can just cut off the piece of paper and try again on a new one. When this is 100% dry, you can either leave them connected together or you can cut them apart. All right, have a wonderful time painting. Think of sunny days on the water, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye now.